Hello, welcome or welcome back to the YarnNYarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting, spinning, crochet and weaving, all of the fibre related things. Today's video is my May making wrap up video, so I'm going to be talking about all of the things that I got up to during the month of May. I have mainly got knitting and spinning to share with you today, but I do have a little acquisition segment at the end, another one. I had a lovely day out in May, which I will talk to you about later, and I brought a few souvenirs home with me. I've also got a little section about some dyeing that I did, which is definitely a first for this channel, I think. I've done dyeing in the past, but I think it might have been pre the YouTube channel, so yeah, I've got a little bit of a show and tell with regards to a lovely day that I spent with my friend Samantha. I'm going to be recording this video in segments. Obviously I shall edit it all together so it's one seamless video for you, but I just thought I'd mention that in case there's any changes in the angle or the lighting. I've got little pockets of time in my day between other things that I need to do, so I'm just going to grab those pockets as and when I can and record sort of 10 minutes or 5 minutes of me chatting away, and then I'm going to edit it all together. So yeah, if it gets a little bit choppy then I apologise, but I'm just trying to fit this in as and when I can around the rest of my work day. And I think I'm going to start with spinning today because spinning is a fairly short segment. I did a lot of plying in the month of May. I needed to clear off my support spindles. I think I probably showed last month a little basket of my singles yarns that I'd spun from the advent calendar that I did as a swap with my lovely friend Lisa. And so I have got this lovely selection of different samples of yarn that I span from the bats that were in the little swap that I did with Lisa. So here we go. So that took me quite some time to ply all of this yarn, and I haven't done any sort of measurements yet in terms of how many meters I got for each skein, but all the fibres are completely different. Lisa blended up a whole bunch of really fun things for me to spin through, and I've slowly been working my way through all of the different bats that were in the lovely swap that we did. Some of these have got their label tags on them. Some of them have only just finished drying, so I haven't matched up the labels to the yarns yet. And I'm going to add those to not very sexy storage, but I've been keeping the rest of the yarns that I've spun from my advent bats in this bag. So I'm going to add those to the bag, and I've only got a couple left now to spin up, so it won't be long before this project, my advent calendar, is done, and then I can take some lovely photos of all of the yarns. And then I also finished up a couple of other little sample spins this month as well. No big spins got completed this month, but that's okay. Lots of plying has been done. I have this skein of yarn, which again I spun on my support spindles, and this was spun up from some lovely rolags that were a kind Christmas gift from my friend Samantha. We did our little sort of present swap in the new year. As soon as she gifted me these lovely rolags that she'd made on her blending board, I had to start spinning them, and again I spun them up on my support spindles. The rolags consisted of a mix of different fibres, including Corriedale, Rambouillet and some Angelina Sparkle, and they were beautiful sort of tones of sort of pinks and reds and greens, very sort of traditional Christmas, and with some white in there too. So this is my little sample yarn that I got from that, and I have measured this one. Spun this on my support spindle. I chain plied the yarn to make a 3-ply yarn, and I've got approximately 90 meters and 30 grams of yarn in that skein. So I will pop that one in my handspun stash, and hopefully I shall be able to incorporate that into a fun little project at some point in the not too distant future. I also, just for funsies, spun up a little sample that I got free, I think, with a spindle that I ordered. I think it was my Mirkwood spindle, that's it. I, a few months ago, bought a spindle from Mirkwood that had sort of rainbow crystals on, and Mirkwood always send their spindles out, or at least the ones I've purchased have always come with a little mini bat. So I spun up the fibre that was in the little mini bat as well. I think I just 2-plied that one. I haven't got a label on that one, so yeah, I think I just 2-plied that little sample. I've also finished the final, hopefully final, skein of yarn that I need for completing my litmus cowl. This fibre is the sort of main colour that I'm using in a litmus cowl, which is a pattern by Jude of Stranded Dye Works. and this is some fibre from John Arbon, and I've spun several little quantities of that as I've been knitting through my litmus. I didn't want to end up with a whole bunch of yarn that I didn't need, so I'm hoping this final little skein will be what I need to finish my litmus, and I'm hoping to get back to my litmus knit next month. Last but by no means least for my spinning adventures last month, I did a little bit of drop spindling, and I've got these two little skeins which I'm actually going to be winding up and casting on soon for a little sample. I have a thought to make a brioche shawl. It's a circular pattern, and I'm trialling these two yarns as my colours for that shawl. I'm not quite sure that they're quite the right colour match, but I'm just going to cast on and do a little sample and see what I think. This one is some Biffdale silk fibre that I purchased from Velvet Sixpence at Wonderwall a couple of months ago, and it's a blend of Blueface Leicester, Corriedale and Mulberry silk, and I specifically bought this one with the shawl project in mind. I've got 2 braids of this, so there's 200 grams of fibre, that I'm hoping will go into this shawl if I can make it work. And then this sample here is actually from some Shetland fibre from a fleece that I hand combed myself and have been slowly spinning through on my drop spindle. And when I was at Wonderwall, I was shopping for 2 colours for my shawl, and I couldn't quite find 2 colours that I wanted to go together. And then when I got home, I thought to myself, maybe this that I already had and that I was already working through would actually work for this shawl. So I've been slowly spinning up the singles, but they're all on storage bobbins at the moment. I decided to actually ply up a little sample of this just so that I could knit my little swatch to see if these are going to work together. If they don't, it's absolutely fine. I was spinning through this anyway. It's just a thought that these two may go together. I'm not sure if these two are going to give enough contrast for what I'm looking for. Time will tell, time will tell. That's it for my spinning adventures for May. So quite a lot of plying, quite a lot of yarn was made, but mostly all little sort of sample skeins and smaller quantities rather than any big spins completed. So with spinning done, let's move on to knitting. I've got quite a few projects to share with you, including 3 finished objects. They're all quite small finished objects, but they're finished nonetheless, which is always a good thing, right? For the month of May, when I played my little game with the dice to try and determine my priority projects, one of the prompts that popped up was to work on projects that were almost finished. All 3 of the finished objects, I kind of used that prompt as an excuse to work on them. So first off, I have my Koigu fingerless mitts, which were a project that I cast on in the month of April, thanks to you lovely folks out there in YouTube land who encouraged me to cast on something new. And so I went to a yarn that was in my self-destructing yarn basket. I've got loads of this yarn left, so I think there might be some socks from this yarn soon. Not sure if the socks will be for me, or maybe they will end up being a gift for James's mum. I don't need to, but I usually make a pair of socks for her for Christmas, birthday, sometimes both, and I've got plenty of this yarn left. This was a Mr. B yarn, Bird Street yarns, that had been in my stash for quite some number of years, and decided to pull this one out of the self-destructing yarn basket at the last minute and cast on this pair of mittens. So yeah, the pattern is the Koigu fingerless mitts. It's a free pattern over on Ravelry, and I decided to add a little bit of a contrast edging around the rib and the top of the fingers to my gloves. I haven't yet soaked and sort of washed these. I think I will do it because I feel like they could be like 1/4 of an inch longer just down here. I feel like they're sort of riding up a little bit. So if I knit these again, maybe I'd add a few extra rows before I entered into the sort of increasing for the thumb gusset. But I'm hoping with this being a superwash yarn that when I sort of soak and dry these, it might just stretch out a little bit anyway. Obviously I gave myself a little bit of extra work by adding in these contrasts. There were so many ends to weave in at the end, but I do like the effect that the little bit of contrasting yarn has given. And that contrast colour was a little bit of Cascade 220 that I had in my stash. Those were the first project that I managed to get finished. The next finished object that I have to share with you is a pair of socks, and there's a bit of a sad tale to go with these socks. But I finished my socks that I was knitting from the beautiful yarn from Attic Spin Dye in their Spice Market colourway. I had put these on the needles back at the start of the year. I was going to knit them as a gift for a friend, but as I was knitting the colours, they just weren't really reminding me of my friend. Decided to switch my yarn out, and I made my friend a different pair of socks. Then when we went away with James's family, James's dad asked if I would knit a pair of socks for James's gran, and I thought about these that I'd already got started. So I put them back on the needles and I finished them. There is a second sock. I can't find my second sock blocker. Who knows where it's gone, but yeah, just proof that there is a pair. I again used the almost finished prompt as an excuse to get these off the needles, and so I cast them off and was thinking about getting them blocked and packaged up to send off to James's gran when we sadly had the news that she'd passed away. It is sad but not unexpected. She was in her 90s and had poor health for a couple of years now, so these socks are not to be gifted after all. And I've been thinking about what to do with these. I love this colourway, and as it so happens, James's gran is the same size foot as me, but I don't think I wanted to keep them, and I don't know that I just want to donate them either. So what I'm actually thinking about for these finished socks is to maybe put them up for sale on either my website or my destash page. I haven't thought about it yet, and to donate any money that I get from these socks. I will have a chat to James's grandpa and see if there was a particular charity that he might like to support. So yeah, I'm thinking I might sell these socks and just try and raise a few pounds. I know it won't be much, but every little bit helps any charity, doesn't it? So yeah, I think that's what will happen with these lovely Spice Market socks. And I do have a little bit of leftover. I did make these slightly longer in the leg than I would usually have done for myself, but I feel like I might have enough left over to make a pair of shorty socks for me. I'm hoping over the next few weeks and months to add a few more pairs of shorty socks to my sort of summer sock collection. I wear my knitted socks all year round, and in the summer I like to have shorty socks to wear in my trainers. I think I've got 4 or 5 pairs, and that's not quite enough, so I want to add a few more pairs so I've got more to add to the rotation for my summer socks. So I may end up making a pair of socks for myself out of this yarn anyway. I did also finish one final project in the month of May, and the not so eagle-eyed amongst you might notice there's been a bit of an outfit change because it's several days later. I have been struggling for the past couple of days to get this video edited and uploaded. There's just been something funny in the file which just would not let me compress the file into one video, and it's been driving me absolutely bonkers. I have spent so much time trying to figure this out. Anyway, eventually I figured out that this one part of the video was corrupted for some reason. Here I am a couple of days later re-recording this segment, and it's absolutely sweltering hot up here in the attic, so I'm going to try and get this done as quickly as possible. The third project that I finished is my lovely Scrah bucket, which is a knitted bag pattern with a beautiful drawstring closure, and this pattern is by Tracy of The Passionate Spinner. I cast this on as part of my 12 cast-ons this year. It's such a cute little pattern. It's fully reversible, so I can flip my bag inside out. So if you wanted to sort of make your bag with 2 different colours, you could have in effect almost 2 different bags depending on your mood. I've ended up preferring the first side that I knit, the slightly darker side. I use lots of leftovers from my leftover basket for this. The pattern suggests that you use sock yarn or 4-ply yarn held double. I like this side better, as I mentioned. I don't know, this one's slightly more cohesive. I had one quite large leftover in my basket, which was actually a really precious leftover from a skein that James gifted me after he went on a work trip to Seattle. He popped by a local yarn shop there and came home with 2 skeins of yarn to gift me, and I knitted them up into a shawl, but I had a fair bit left over of one of the yarns, which was a singles 4-ply, and it's this, you can see it quite easily on the bottom where all these dark sort of flecks are. That's the yarn that I had left over, and I managed to carry that up almost to the top of the outside of this bag, and I think that gave it a much more sort of cohesive look than the other side that I ended up knitting, but they're both perfectly fine, and it's a really great way to use up scraps. I just ended up preferring this side of my bag. I'm going to be using mine as a project bag, and I'm looking forward to filling it up with a new project soon. I think that I shall be knitting a lot more of these. It's a great way to use up leftovers. I could see one of these in every colour. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a rainbow of scrub bucket bags? I think I will just use this for a month or two to make sure that I do enjoy using it as a bag. I've not really used a knitted bag as a project bag before, so yeah, I'm just going to make sure that I do enjoy using it before I embark on knitting more. That was my squirrel bucket, and I'm going to hand you back to Ange from a couple of days ago now to chat about the rest of the projects that I worked on in the month of May. No more finished objects, but I do have quite a few works in progress to share with you. So the things that I made some progress on but didn't quite, or didn't get anywhere near finishing in the month of May. So first up is our community picked project. So as part of my making priorities each month, I have a group of people who have volunteered to pick a project for me, and they have carte blanche to pick either a new project for me to cast on or something that I've already got in my works in progress pile. And last month Jane picked my project, and Jane asked if I would work on the Latvian mitts, and so that is what I did. Now, long-time viewers will know that this has been a project in progress for a good few years at this point, which I know is kind of ridiculous for a mitt, but I keep putting this into kind of hibernation because I find it a little bit frustrating to work on this project. It's absolutely beautiful. The patterning, the colours are just stunning, but each round takes a long time. It's worked on 2mm needles. There are 4 colours in each round to wrangle. The yarn is very sort of sticky, very woolly, and keeps getting sort of tangled up on itself no matter what I try to do to kind of manage that. And so each row takes up to about half an hour to complete each row. Some of them are quicker, but yeah, sometimes they can take half an hour just to knit one row of this mitten, which I know is ridiculous, and there'll be some people out there who are much more experienced in colour work and are easily able to kind of juggle all of these colours. Fair play to them. That's just not me. This is just a slow project for me. There have been times where I've popped this into hibernation because it's been a little bit frustrating. However, I did make a reasonable amount of progress on this mitt this month. I forgot to put a marker in to share where I was, but I think I was around here somewhere. And I think I've got maybe 4 or 5 rows left before I start the decrease for the top of the mitt. So progress is being made. And I'm actually quite grateful to Jane for picking this project, because the time that I've spent with it this month has just made me realise that I need to accept that it's extremely slow for me to knit this project, and to move away from feeling the frustration and just, you know, accept that when I pick this up it's going to take a long time and I'm not going to make a ton of progress, even though I feel like I should be making loads of progress because it's only, you know, a small amount of stitches per round. Just need to get my mind into the sort of right space for it, and as with all of my other projects, they'll get finished. It will get finished when it gets finished, and to try and just enjoy the time that I work on it. The yarn's beautiful, the pattern's beautiful. Think about this project in a slightly different way. So rather than label it as frustrating, just label it as slow, and to enjoy the time that I do get to spend with it. So yeah, thank you Jane for picking this project. I have made some good progress. I know it doesn't seem like much, but I did spend a good number of hours working on this. Yeah, I'm just grateful to have had the opportunity to rethink the project and to enjoy it for what it is, in contrast to the Latvian mitts and the slow progress that I made on those. The next project I made quite a lot of progress on, and this one was another one that Jane gave me to pick from. So she gave me the Latvian mitts or my Carlina sweater, and then when I rolled the dice I got the prompt to work on something orange, so something in my favourite colour, and so I decided I could have the excuse to pick up the Carlina. I managed to finish the colour work, so the yoke is done, and I've literally just separated off the stitches for the sleeves and the body. Can you see that? Hopefully. Camera's a bit too close to me today. I've been having such a good time with this project, as you might be able to tell. I'm using some beautiful non-superwash yarn from Attic Spin Dye as my background colour, and then I've got this really subtle gradient handspun yarn, which the fibre was from Hilltop Cloud originally, and it goes from this really sort of deep, almost black purple through to a sort of lighter purple at the tip. So it's very, very subtle, but the gradient effect is there. And yeah, I spun that yarn up a little while ago, and I love how these two are played together. The colour combination, the stitch definition is lovely. My hand spun is slightly thicker than the background yarn. I'm okay with that. So I'm super, super happy with that. And I hope to make a little bit more progress on that this month too, because if you've watched my June making plans, you'll know that it's Jumper June here, unofficially, in the Yarn and Yarns community. And I've pulled loads of sweater projects to work on this month. We've got a thread going over in Ravelry, so if you're a Ravelry user and you want to join in the sweater chat, there's a thread that our lovely moderator Jeanette started. So lots of people are sharing their progress on their sweaters this month over in that thread. There are still 2 more works in progress to share with you. I did quite a lot of knitting. I guess because I pulled 3 projects for that almost finished prompt, I ended up working on quite a few different things. The dice roll picked the Macaire shawl for me to work on last month, which is a pattern by Emma Vining, and I purchased this as a kit from Berlin Yarn Company because I've been very interested in working with their yarn. And it's a shawl that has a bit of lace detail and some bobbling in it. Don't know how well you can see the texture in that. I picked it up back here, so I've got this little market in here, and this is what I managed to knit in May, and I'm super close. I think there's 2 more pattern repeats and then I'm finished, but I couldn't quite eke out enough time because I also wanted to get that yoke finished in the Carlina. If I wasn't pushing on to get the yoke finished in Carlina, I think I could have finished this shawl. I'm really enjoying working with this yarn from the Berlin Yarn Company. It's a very woolly yarn, so not a soft merino. It's definitely got a bit of a sort of harder wearing feel to it than that. I'm going to be interested to see how much it softens up in the wash process. At this stage, I'm not actually sure if I'm going to be keeping this project. I don't know how much wear I'll get out of this shape. I mean, the pattern's called a shawl, but it's a very long, almost scarf-like effect. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about the project overall. Once I've washed and blocked it and can see the sort of final shape and what it looks like, I will make a decision. But I'm enjoying the process, I'm enjoying the knit, I'm enjoying working with the yarn. I'm enjoying the yarn very much so, actually, to the point where if I decide that maybe this shawl isn't for me, I might end up frogging it, which I know is a silly thing to say when I haven't even finished it yet. But I don't think there's too much point in keeping. I've got lots of shawls and cowls and all sorts in my collection already, and I don't think there's much point in keeping something for the sake of keeping it because I finished it. I've enjoyed the knitting process, and I'm definitely going to finish the shawl. I'm not 100% set on keeping the finished object, and I might end up ripping out the project and using the yarn for something else because the yarn really is beautiful. I know that seems like a silly thing to say, doesn't it? But that's just how I'm feeling about that project at the moment. I'm enjoying the process of it, but I don't know if I'm going to enjoy the finished object. But time will tell. I don't need to worry about that just yet because it's not finished, and I'm not sure when I'm going to get back to working on this one. I've just realised I said I had 1 more project to show you, and I've got 2. It just keeps going on and on, doesn't it? Never ending. I worked on my litmus cowl last month, and I picked this as a project to work on. I got the prompt to work on one of my 23 in 23 projects. 23 in 23 is a make-along being hosted by Tracy of Passionate Spinner, who I've already mentioned. And the idea is to finish 23 projects that you'd started before the beginning of this year. It doesn't have to be knit. It can be any kind of craft really, so knitting, crochet, spinning, weaving, sewing, like literally anything. And so my litmus cowl definitely counted for that because this has been in progress for almost 18 months now, because I've started by spinning all of the yarn for this. When I picked this up, I'd finished the first colour repeat, so from this sort of beigey colour right through to this stripe here, and then this month I'd really hoped that I might be able to finish this one as well. I know, I feel like I've got 48 hours in a day, don't I, with all these things I think I'm going to get done. It wasn't meant to be, and the reason that I stalled on this project more than anything else was because I ran out of my main colour yarn, and I knew I would, and my goal was to spin as I went along, but I just ended up procrastinating and I didn't get around to spinning it up. You saw earlier in the spinning segment that I do now have the yarn, and I'm hoping this will be enough now to finish the final few colours in the shawl. I think I've got 4 colours left. Next time I get to pick this up, the litmus will definitely get done, and I've got plans for July, with it being the Tour de Fleece month, to work on handspun projects and some spinning next month. So yeah, I don't think it will be too long before the litmus comes flying off the needles. Right, the final project that I worked on during May. It was a long old month, wasn't it? It was a long month. I went back to working on my Advent mitten garland. If you've been watching the channel since the beginning of the year when we did our sort of 12 cast-ons adventure, you might remember that I had a goal of trying to knit 2 mittens per month for this little garland, and during the month of April I did not touch this project at all. So I decided I needed to rectify that in May, and I managed to finish mitten number 10, which had been done all by the thumb, so I only had this teeny tiny little bit left, but I did mitten number 10. I also managed to cast on and finish mitten number 11 and mitten number 12. So overall I'm still ahead, because if I was sticking to my 2 a month I would be up to number 10 by now, but I've managed to get ahead earlier on in the year, and I'd like to try and keep it that way, because if I can keep 2 ahead of the game between sort of now and the end of the year, then I should have this set of mittens finished by the end of November, which will be perfect for hanging them up for Advent. So yeah, I've got a nice stack of 12 of these mittens now done. So I'm halfway there, halfway through. Spoiler for June, I've already started my June mittens. I feel motivated, I'm on a roll with these, and I want to kind of keep up the momentum. So rather than leaving it till the very last days of the month, I have already cast on for the next one. So there we go, all of the things that I worked on in May. I mentioned earlier on in the video that I had some dyeing to share with you, and dyeing is an aspect of our sort of fibre world that I've been trying not to get too tempted by, because I already do so many things and I don't have enough time for the things that I already do, and I knew that I could quite easily go down a rabbit hole if I started sort of dyeing. But my lovely friend Samantha invited me over to her house. She said, come over to my house and we'll have a fun day dyeing up some yarn and fibre, but just bring whatever you fancy and we'll have a play. So we did. And I dyed up some yarn and some fibre, so I've got those to share with you. So let's share with you the yarns that I dyed first. We did a really fun experiment whereby Samantha had these balls of Jacob yarn that she'd bought from a D-stash, and the yarn was all sort of balled up into a sort of donut shaped ball in effect. And Samantha mentioned that she'd seen this video where someone had dyed the yarn in the ball form. So basically we poked some powder into the top of the yarn balls and then heated up in the hot water and citric acid that you need to set these acid dyes, and just let the dyes do their thing. And these were the results that we got. So we did one which had orange, yellow and a turquoise dye, and this is what we got from that. As I say, we just let the dyes do their own thing. And we did another where we used sort of pink shades of pinks and purples, and so this was the skein that we got from that. So we dyed 4 balls like this in this technique, and so Sam has kept 2 and I've got these 2. And then I took with me a couple of skeins of undyed opal sock yarn. We did a little bit of a dyeing experiment with that. It is one of my opal sock yarn skeins that I dyed, and I'm super pleased with how this one turned out. It was a really fun experiment. And if you can believe it, these 2 came from the same dye bar. Because we'd put the dry powder, the dye powder, straight onto the yarn in this one, it was kind of hard to see how much dye we were actually using. And so there was a lot of colour left in the water after we'd dyed our 2 skeins. Decided to have fun dip dyeing this skein of opal, and in effect I've kind of ended up with a bit of a gradient, although I think when I knit it up it will be almost like a micro stripe. So I just stood over the dye pot and held this bottom end of the skein in the dye pot, let it soak up a lot of the dye, and then I gradually let the rest of the yarn sort of fall into the dye pot and soak up all of the dye that was left. So I've got this so deep sort of foresty, almost olive green at the end, going into this sort of almost sea foamy kind of green, and then the yarn at the very top of the skein is still mostly undyed. It has some sort of little hints of the green, but by the time I got to this part, most of the dye had been exhausted from the pot. That was a really fun experiment, and I think I'm going to try and cast this on for some socks soon, because I'm just curious to see how it's going to knit up. The other skein of opal that I took with me, I don't actually have. We did another experiment at the end of the day where we mixed some yellows, some oranges, I think we had some red in the pot as well, and we tried a little bit of speckling, and some of the speckled areas worked, some of them didn't quite work. The sort of dye spread out and just ended up in sort of solid areas of colour rather than the speckles that we were going for, but Samantha really liked that skein, and so, you know, I had taken away 2 of her Jacob skeins, so I thought it was only fair that we do a trade, and Sam kept the orangey sort of opal skein that we dyed. As well as the yarn, I took with me some fibre, and these are my fibre dye experiments. So I had some Humbug Jacob fibre in my stash left over from one of the YarnNYarns mystery fibre clubs, and humbug is just a term for where at the mill they'll blend up several different colours. If you've ever seen a Jacob sheep, they're super cute sheep and they tend to have several different colours. I thought it might be quite fun to dye up some of this Humbug Jacob, because the dark areas wouldn't really take the dye, but the lighter areas would. So that's exactly what's happened, and I've got some kind of fun fibre to play with. So this one, of course, you can see, was pretty much just one solid colour of purple. I think I used the same dye bath. I think what was left over in the water from us dyeing these, I think, is what went on to my first Jacob fibre. And then we tried another experiment where I laid my fibre out in the pan for these 2 skeins and put the dye onto the fibre in a slightly more organised way. So I went from sort of blue at one end to greens at the other end, and I think you can sort of see that variation in that one. And I did the same on this one, where I went from a yellow at one end to a red at the other. I think these are going to make for some really interesting yarns when I spin them up, because the colour will start sort of merging with those darker areas of the fibre. I think it's going to make for a nice kind of moody, rainbowy kind of yarn. I'm hoping to maybe try and spin these up during Tour de Fleece, but I've got lots of things that I would love to spin up during Tour de Fleece next month, way more than I know I'm going to be able to get done. They were the experiments for my dye day. I would love to do more experimenting with dyeing. I really would, but yeah, I'm afraid to go down that rabbit hole. I feel like it might be quite fun, particularly to get into a little bit of dyeing for the sort of YarnNYarns fibre clubs, but we'll see, we shall see. So final section of the day before we wrap up is my acquisitions, and I had a lovely day out in Bath with my friend Julia, and we went to take a darning workshop. It was just a couple of hours in the afternoon, and it was a class run by the lovely Lizzie of Little Moth Men's. I'll pop a link to Lizzie's Instagram down below if you're interested in checking out some of her amazing sort of darning and mending. I took a sock with me that was in dire need of a bit of repair. I don't know where my other sock's gone. I've got another one somewhere. Oh, here it is. They both needed repairing, so I did a little bit of darning on my socks, so they live to be worn another day. Before we went to the workshop, because the workshop was only a couple of hours in the afternoon, we decided to head to Bath for the day. So we headed over in the morning and we went yarn shopping, of course. We went to Wool and we went to a yarn story, and I made purchases in both shops. So we went to Wool first, and I picked up 3 skeins of yarn. These 2 here are Rowan Soft Yak DK, which I used to stock when I had the YarnNYarns physical shop. I don't have as much room to stock all of the yarn lines anymore. but this is a lovely mix of cotton, yak and nylon. And I've got a sweater quantity of an orangey colour, surprise surprise. Been thinking about making the, what's it called? It's a pattern by Samantha Guerin Designs. Harvest, can't remember, I'll put it on the screen. But I needed like a contrast colour because that pattern you can sort of like add some stripes to, and we found the orangey colour on the shelf in wool, and I picked out these two as potential contrast to add a few little stripes in, which I think is going to be quite fun, these kind of pinky purpley hues, tones. So yeah, that will be a sweater that I cast on as soon as I can. I'm contemplating maybe casting it on in August. August is my birthday month, and I feel like I might cast on a sweater project, and this might be the one. So yeah, that was my first purchase at Wool. So, you know, not frivolous, I know what I'm going to do with those two. And then I saw this lovely Wool Addicts yarn by YarnNYarns, which is a cotton based sock yarn. It is, what does it say on here? 45% cotton, 42% wool and 11% polyamide. You know why I went for this colour. You know it. I thought it'd be just fun to try out some cotton sock yarn. I have knit with cotton sock yarn before, but I don't have any cotton socks in my own sock collection. A couple of years ago I had some yarn from Opal that was a cotton wool mix in the YarnNYarns shop, but it all sold out, and I think I ended up knitting a pair of cotton socks for one of my customers. But I've never kept a pair for myself, and I just really liked these colours. But also I might end up knitting this into a sort of summery shawl or a cowl. Might not necessarily go for socks. I haven't decided yet. These colours are so pretty. They sort of scream summer to me. So yeah, there's a few possibilities for that skein. And then we went to a yarn story. I was immediately drawn to this yarn from Cama Rose, which I have used Cama Rose before because I used their DK or their 4-ply to make my Babette blanket, a crochet blanket. But this is a superwash version, so the yarn I had was a non-superwash wool, and this is Yaku, their Yaku base, which is a superwash wool. And I just fell in love with this beautiful, beautiful orange colourway. As I was wandering around the shop, I also came across this silk mohair blend. I decided to pick this up and potentially use these two together because I thought the colour match was just lovely. So I didn't go too crazy, but I did bring home souvenirs from both of those shops. Those were my acquisitions for May. Always fabulous when you have those days where you just spend time making good memories with lovely friends, isn't it? Okay, we have finally got to the end of the video now. Do, of course, let me know in the comments below what you worked on during the month of May. Did you manage to finish anything? Did you make significant progress on anything? Did you cast on anything new? You know I love to hear about new cast-ons. I'm always here cheerleading the cast-on parties. I've been really feeling the urge to cast on some new projects recently, but I'm trying not to go too crazy and concentrate on some of the things that I've got on the needles. I've got plenty on the needles already. I've gone off in my head about all of the things that I want to cast on. Particularly given I've got this gorgeous bag of yarn in front of me and these lovely fibres and yarns that I've dyed. Must stop daydreaming and get on with my works in progress, and then maybe I can cast on some new things. Right. I am going to say goodbye to you, so thank you so much for sticking with me to the end if you have. I shall be back again soon with some more making content here on the channel, so I hope you will join me for the next video. But until we do get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now. Bye.